Well, Hudson Gardens was gorgeous. They have a mix of beautiful perennials and annuals that bloom all summer long. But here, I'm with Bob VanLiere with Iris for You. It's a beautiful iris garden. I mean, talk about a niche plant. You have decided on one plant and you're going to go with that. This is a commercial iris farm. And Bob, you have what, 2.5 acres here, you said?
2.5 acres.
And it's all iris. It's the most spectacular thing you've ever seen when it's in full bloom in May and early June.
Correct.
Isn't that usually when
Correct.
it happens?
Peak bloom is normally the last week of May.
Yeah, not this year.
Not this year. No.
It was way early this year, I remember that. But one of the questions we get asked a lot is, how and when do you dig up and divide an iris, and why would you do it?
When you're going to want to dig up the irises about middle of July, about 8 to 10 weeks after it's finished flowering. So 8 weeks after it's finished flowering. So from, say, the end of May, month of, you got
And why do
June,
we want to wait that period of time?
because there's no roots on the plant.
Okay.
But ideally, you want it to establish a new root system for the existing fan that's there that
Okay.
didn't produce a flower. So what we're going to do is dig up this clump.
Now, as I recall, one of the reasons that you want to do this is about every 3 to 5 years, these plants are going to get really crowded, and they may not bloom as well.
That's correct.
They're also may even develop that dead center. Sometimes you see iris clumps that just have a ring of living around the outside and it's dead in the middle. And you told me that's waiting too long.
Waiting too long. As you can see here, this is the old root system that supported the old rhizome.
Okay, so it's kind of shriveled and dark.
It'll eventually rot off, and then you'll have holes on the bottom of the rhizome.
Where the roots used to be attached.
Where the roots used to be.
That's not where bugs went in.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's just part of the plant.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, let's take this over to the table so people can...
be ruthless.
You are ruthless, I tell you what.
So you want to discard the old rhizome.
You just break them off. No sanitation involved here, folks. It's just take them apart.
Take them apart, throw that old rhizome.
Here's a good example of the new root system. See, this fan didn't bloom, and here's the new root system is produced, and that's what you want to maintain. You want to secure that into the ground as soon as you can, and it'll continue growing and establish the plant, so it will probably bloom again next year, right?
Correct. And this root system has been established since the flowers stopped flowering.
Okay.
This is all new since middle of May.
Sure. So it's nice and vigorous, and you can tell it's new because it's a very light color, it's very flexible, and it feels very moist. You can use a trowel to break them apart. You can use a sharp spade to break them apart. But I think it's interesting the way you just don't leave any of this old tuber
Correct. Throw that
on
away.
here. This old rhizome. It's not a bulb. It's a rhizome.
Rhizome.
And what makes it different is it's a modified stem,
Correct.
rather than a true bulb like an onion would be. So now, what do you do with this fan?
So we're going to cut it, leaving about 6 inches.
Yeah, it's about 6 to 8 inches.
6 to 8 inches. So you don't forget, you want to write down the name.
Right.
So this was Dusky Challenger.
Okay.
So you got the end, the heel. You want to cut it off. Make
Nice
a smooth
clean
cut.
yeah.
Let it set overnight. Let it callus over before
Okay.
you replant.
Now, repotting or replanting these, let's pretend like these have sat overnight.
So you're going to go back in and prepare your soil. You want to incorporate some fresh compost into your ground. You're going to want to incorporate some triple superphosphate.
A handful of it in the planting hole?
Yeah, I think 2 pounds per 100 square feet.
Okay.
You know,
so it doesn't take that much.
Doesn't take that much, but when you put it in, don't just put it at the base of the plant. Put it all around in that area where you're planting.
And dig it in, right?
And dig it in.
Okay.
The triple superphosphate has to be incorporated into the soil because it doesn't leach into the ground in its
So it needs to be
form.
where the roots are going to be.
Correct.
All right. So now how you put those in the ground? How deeply do they go? Because there's a lot of controversy about that. Well, not controversy, but a lot of questions, a lot of confusion, I guess I should say.
So you want to plant about at least a minimum of 12 inches. 18 inches is better. 18 inches apart.
Okay.
And a little trick to, when you plant, turn the fans at angles to each other, so the rhizome heats up a little bit slower, so you get a little bit delayed flowering.
Okay.
If you planted them all in the same direction, they're all going to warm up at the same amount of time and then flower all at the same time. So,
Okay.
you know, since they're a rhizome, not a bulb, you want to, in Colorado, we want to plant them just below the soil surface.
Just below?
Just below.
Okay.
Just barely cover the rhizome.
It's very tempting to want to plant these things. People think of them as a bulb. Well, they got to go 4 to 6 inches deep, and that's not the case. If you do that, you'll never get a flower off of these things.
So the rhizome is just barely below the surface level.
Well, that's good information. We appreciate that. Now, is it also the time that you would add some regular garden fertilizer, or is the
I think the triple superphosphate initially to help establish the root system.
Okay.
Once you see that center fan coming out, you'll know that the plant has been established. It's starting to grow. You can also give it a little tug, and if it's firm, you know it's growing.
So once you get them in the ground, water them in well. You don't need to mulch them. They like to have the sun baking on the soil.
They need the summer heat to set the flower for next year.
Okay, so don't put mulch over the top of them, and only water them when they get a little on the dry side.
On the dry side. Let the roots go out and find the water.
Okay, excellent. Now, there are a lot of other plants that need to be divided in the garden at certain times of year. Iris happen to be in an unusual situation where you're dividing them in the middle of the summer. Most of your perennials, like what? Like daylilies and daisies and phlox and your typical perennials, will be best divided in early spring when you see just a little bit of new growth on them. Typically that's what, early April, mid-April, that sort of thing.
Or even, I think, mid-March.
If you can get in there that early.
Yeah.
That's the best time to divide those plants. And again, set them at the same depth that you took them out of the ground. And add a little compost, add a little superphosphate, maybe even some garden fertilizer when you're replanting to get them off to a good start. So that concludes our iris demonstration for today. I really appreciate it, Bob. Thank you for showing
Keith.
us all your little tips and tricks there. Make sure you come and visit Bob here at Iris for You. Your visiting hours, are they done for the year?
We're finished. Garden visitation is finished, but the website's open until the end of July.
There you go. So check out the website, place your order if you want some of those beautiful iris. I know I did. I'm looking forward to getting my plants here.